Hey, I want you to look at this. Look at this. I've got holes in my boat. See, I got one right there. Got one right there, and water's coming in. I get that question all the time at boat ramps and stuff like that from guys who just don't know, mostly bass boaters. But anyway, you get that question, hey, what are them holes doing in your boat? Ain't it gonna sink? Scupper holes. We're gonna explain why I plug them, why I don't plug them, and give you guys some great tips on how to use them to your advantage. Stay tuned. That's right. People think these things are gonna sink because they got holes that go all the way through them. Scupper holes. What scupper holes are they are, number one, they're built into the boat to give it structural integrity. Basically, if it weren't there and you stood up on your boat or you put any weight on your boat, it would go and it would squish in. It would flex really, really bad. So it gives you that horizontal stability between the top deck and the bottom of the boat to keep that from happening and to give you that, keep it nice and rigid. Now, number two, it's a drain hole. If you get a big wave over top of your boat, you're kayaking in the river and you go through some rapids, you get some water over your boat, or heaven forbid, it's happened to me, you get turned up on a rock on a river and the water's rushing in on this side. If you didn't have those scupper holes, your boat would fill up and you'd have all kinds of issues. So it allows it to drain. Do you always want the scupper plugs in the scupper hole? No. Let me explain why. All right. So I rarely ever plug all of my scupper holes, but when would I do that and when would I not do that? Okay, so if I wanted to get maximum speed out of my kayak, I would plug them all. And let me explain why. When you plug your scupper holes, it gets a pocket of air inside those holes, and it prevents that the water from coming up through the holes and allowing your boat to sink down. So putting scupper plugs in the holes will allow your boat to rise up just a hair more and give you a little bit more speed, make it a little bit more easy to paddle or pedal, or for me, run my motor guide. Just the opposite, when you pull your scupper plugs, your boat sinks down in the water. You want to do that on windy days. So what happens is the more boat you have up out of the water, the easier it is for the wind to whip you around. So take your scupper plugs out, and that sinks down just a little bit and gives you a little bit more bite on the water and makes it easier to hold still in the wind. All right, as for me, my Bonafide, this SS127 has 2 scupper plugs here, which are the main drain plugs, 2 right here, 2 underneath my butt, and 2 back in the back hatch. I plug 4 of them. I plug the one in the back hatch to keep it somewhat dry. Plus I have a lot of weight. Not only am I a fat butt, but I've got a 100 amp hour Dakota lithium battery in the back. I've got all my tackle and everything else in a black pack. I've got a lot of weight in the back of my boat, so I want it to hold, to rise up just a little bit and be able to hold a little bit more weight. Plus I want the back hatch to stay somewhat dry, because that weight will push it down and allow more water in if I didn't have the scupper plugs plugged. The disadvantage to that is when it rains or when I take on waves, that back hatch can fill up with quite a bit of water, and I have to remind myself when it starts to rain good and hard to pull the plugs so the water will drain out, and I'll get about that much water in the bottom of it as opposed to this much. The ones under my butt, I plug them as well because I'm fat. I want to lift the back end of the boat up just a little bit, and I kind of play around with it, but I find that that's the best. The 2 that I showed you at the beginning are the main drain plugs. The channels run to it and everything runs and drains out of that. That's the lowest point in the boat where it's all going to drain out. I just keep them unplugged. I don't have to. It's not going to hurt much if I plug them, but I like to leave them unplugged. But just remember, scupper holes are a good thing. Not a bad thing. Just because you have them, your boat's not going to sink you, bass boat guys. It is just fine. It's totally normal. But you need to make the decision on whether you want to plug them or unplug them. Either way, you're just fine. I would plug them in the wintertime if I didn't have winter boots and stuff like that, and I was worried about getting wet, or if my seat wasn't raised up, if I was sitting directly on the deck, I would definitely plug them up and try to keep my boat as dry as possible. There's so many other reasons, but you don't have to have them all plugged. But that's it. That's Scupper plugs. Well, like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out on the water, go out and catch some fish, and have a great day. We'll see you.